She's turning blue and the ambulance won't move. She was turning blue, right there on the living room carpet. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, eyes rolling back, lips losing color, seizing so hard I could barely hold her still. I'd called 911 the second her body locked up. The sirens were close. Help was supposed to be seconds away. But it didn't come through the door. It didn't even reach the driveway because someone blocked it. Not a fallen tree, not a traffic accident. A woman. A perfectly healthy, pearl-wearing woman in a pink SUV who decided the sound of the ambulance siren was a violation of neighborhood peace. She wasn't just anyone either. She was the president of our HOA. And the worst part? She thought her rules mattered more than my daughter's life. So let me tell you exactly what happened that night. How a power-hungry HOA president turned a medical emergency into a personal standoff, and how, as both a father and a sheriff, I made sure she never got to do it again. If you've ever seen HOA power go too far, this one's going to shake you. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because what happened next will have you questioning what authority really means. The seizure begins when every second becomes a lifetime. You know that kind of morning where everything feels just right? That was us. Lily was humming while organizing her colored pencils at the kitchen table, a rainbow lined up with surgical precision. It's her thing. She's autistic and routine is her anchor. One color out of place, meltdown, but get everything in order and she shines. So when the storm hit and knocked out the power, and with it, her scheduled therapy session, I knew we were on shaky ground. She didn't scream, didn't even cry, just froze. That quiet freeze kids do when their whole world tilts and they're trying desperately to hold it together. I scooped her up and tried to distract her. We read a book, had tea. I even let her rearrange my spice rack, which she considers high-level fun. For a while, it seemed like we were going to ride the wave. But then, she said her head hurt, and her breathing got shallow. I pressed my palm to her forehead, and it was like touching a stovetop. Minutes later, she was on the couch, curled up, cheeks flushed, and then the twitch. Just a little jerk of her hand, then her arm, then both legs. I knew what it was. I'm the sheriff of this county. I've seen a lot, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you to see your own child's body betray her like that. The seizure rolled through her like a storm. Her eyes flickered, her breathing hitched. She was going under fast. I called 911, calm, controlled, like I'd done 1,000 times. Gave them the address, told them my daughter was seizing. They said help was on the way. That's when time stopped. I knelt next to her, placed her on her side, made sure nothing was near that could hurt her, whispered her name, told her Daddy was right here, that help was coming. But it didn't come fast enough. The sirens were close. I could hear them in the distance. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt dread crawling up my spine. Something didn't feel right. You never forget the look of someone turning blue. Her lips lost color. Her fingers, too. I could see the outline of every muscle in her tiny frame seizing up in waves. And I could do nothing but hold her hand and pray. And still, no knock on the door. No paramedic rushing in with a bag of gear and calm instructions. Just nothing. That's when I made the second 911 call. If you've ever had a loved one in crisis and felt that helpless, that hollowed-out panic, you know. You know. That's why I want you to stay with me for this story. 'Cause what happened next? It's not just about what happened to my daughter. It's about how far some people will go to uphold the illusion of control, even when it costs a child her life. If this story is already hitting home, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. We've got to get stories like this heard. Leave a comment if you've ever had to fight bureaucracy in a moment when you just needed help. Now, let's talk about what stopped that ambulance from ever reaching my driveway. The woman in the way when power becomes a wall. You'd think when a child's life is hanging by a thread, the world would stop to help you pull her back. You'd think that sirens would part seas, neighbors would rush forward, rules would melt into instinct, and for once, humanity would override HOA regulations. But no, that's not what happened on my street. As I opened my front door, barefoot and breathless, I didn't see EMTs sprinting in with stretchers. I saw a pink SUV, parked sideways across the cul-de-sac like it was defending a national treasure. And in front of it, arms folded, lips pursed so tightly they could have sealed an envelope, stood her, Lydia Watkins, president of our HOA, queen of the laminated bylaw printout, self-appointed guardian of visual tranquility. She looked at that ambulance, lights flashing, engine humming, and you'd think someone had dared to bring a brass band to her spa day. Before I could shout, she already was. "This is a quiet community," she screeched at the paramedics. "We have decibel limits." Decibel limits? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tackle her out of the way. But all I could see was Lily inside, turning blue. One of the paramedics tried logic. "Ma'am, we have a child in medical crisis. You need to move your vehicle immediately." But logic? That doesn't work when someone's ego is bigger than their driveway. "I've seen that kid," she said, "always making strange noises, probably faking it for attention." I swear, I felt my heart break and boil at the same time. "That's my daughter you're talking about," I wanted to yell. "The little girl who lines her crayons by shade, who whispers songs under her breath, who calls the moon her nightlight. That's the child you're accusing of faking?" I stepped forward, voice shaking. "Move your car, now." She looked at me like I was an unruly teenager at a country club. "Who do you think you are?" she spat. In another world, I'd flash my badge, say county sheriff, shut this down in a heartbeat. But my badge was upstairs. My uniform was in the closet, and the only thing I had right now was the desperation of a father watching his daughter fade away. So I did what I could. I looked her in the eye and said, "You're standing between a child and the help she needs, and that's not power, Lydia, that's cruelty." She flinched, just a bit, then doubled down, like tyrants do. "This is private property," she snapped. "You want access, you follow the rules, sirens off, or nothing moves." I swear, I heard something in me crack. Neighbors started to appear, phones out, eyebrows raised. You could feel it shifting, the silent witnesses realizing this wasn't just a bad HOA moment, it was a moral failure, unfolding in real time. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the patrol car arrived. I'll never forget the look on Officer Ray's face when he took it all in. And I'll never forget what happened next. The sheriff's dilemma, uniform or father first. The moment Officer Reyes stepped out of his cruiser, I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew me. We'd shared too many night shifts not to. But this time he wasn't saluting me as his commanding officer. This time, I was barefoot, shaking, and fighting to save my daughter. I didn't say, "Reyes, it's me." I didn't pull rank, I just pointed toward the flashing ambulance and said, "She's in there, Lily, seizing." He nodded, jaw tight. Then he turned to Lydia. "Ma'am, move your car, now." She didn't budge. She actually tilted her head, like a drama teacher prepping for a monologue. "Do you know who I am?" she asked him. Couldn't help it. I muttered under my breath. A woman one bad decision away from a court date. Reyes kept it together. I could see his training kicking in, firm but polite. Me, I was coming undone at the seams. Every fiber of my being wanted to grab that SUV and push it into the next county. But because that's not who I am. Or is it? That was the moment, the dilemma. Was I still Sheriff Carter, the calm presence in chaos? Or was I just Lily's dad, a man on the edge, standing between his daughter and the help she needed? And for a terrifying second, I didn't know which part of me was stronger. I turned, sprinted back inside. Lily's little body still convulsing, lips pale, the paramedic working fast with a portable oxygen tank. "She needs the full kit," he told me. "We need that stretcher. We need the truck." Back outside, Lydia was quoting bylaws again, something about decibel limits and her husband's nap time. That's when the switch flipped. I walked right up to her, calm, controlled. "Move your vehicle, now." "Or what?" she smirked. "You're not even in uniform." I took a breath, a long, dangerous one. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm David Carter, County Sheriff." She blinked, laughed. "Sure you are." Officer Reyes stepped in. "He's telling the truth." Even then, she didn't budge, didn't flinch, didn't care. And that's when I realized something painful. Some people only respect power when it's wrapped in a costume. I didn't have the badge. I didn't need it. Because in that moment, I wasn't just the sheriff. I was a father. And that was more than enough. Sirens. Verse became a moral fight. You ever realize the world's upside down when a siren trying to save a child is treated like the problem? That was the moment. That one ridiculous, surreal moment when I stood there, barefoot, sweat-soaked, heart thudding like a war drum, and watched Lydia Watkins, self-declared HOA monarch, argue that a siren was more offensive than a child gasping for breath. The EMTs were ready. The meds were prepped. The stretcher was still stranded behind her wall of pink fiberglass and ego. And her biggest concern? It's too loud. Officer Martin had joined Reyes by now, her patience worn thinner than the elastic on a decades-old swimsuit. She ordered Lydia to move. Lydia pulled out a paper. Yup. An HOA printout with something called Section 14, subsection B. I didn't know what was more ridiculous, that she thought it could override the laws of decency, biology, and physics. "This is a quiet neighborhood," she screeched. "We have rules. Sirens after 7 p.m. must be pre-approved." Pre-approved? I wanted to say, "Ma'am, would you like me to fill out a request form while my daughter's brain cooks itself?" Instead, I let Officer Martin handle it. "You have 5 seconds, she said, unlocking her handcuffs. "Or what?" Lydia shot back. Officer Martin just raised one brow. "Try me." And that was when the sirens, those blessed, defiant sirens, became more than noise. They became a choice, a symbol. Would we value order over life, decorum over oxygen, peace and quiet over a little girl's chance to wake up tomorrow? Lydia, of course, chose decorum. She took her sweet time unlocking her SUV, every turn of the key a little insult. She finally moved her vehicle about 6 feet. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The ambulance crept forward. The paramedics burst out like a pit crew at Daytona. The stretcher, the gear, the full kit. It all came flying in through our door. And then, she did it. She yelled again, "Turn off the siren." Even as Lily was being loaded, even as her life hung on the edge of every beep and every breath, Lydia Watkins demanded silence. And I realized right then, this wasn't about HOA rules, it was about control. And she'd just lost hers. But Lily hadn't lost her chance. And that's all that mattered. If you've ever had to fight against a ridiculous rule just to do what's right, go ahead and smash that like button. And subscribe if you're with us on the side of sirens, not silence. The law versus the rule book, when HOA meets real consequences. I've worn a badge for nearly 20 years. I've seen gang busts, hostage standoffs, high-speed chases on back roads and back alleys. But I have never, and I mean never, seen someone get cuffed over Section 14, subsection B of an HOA noise ordinance. Till that night. When Beverly Martin clicked the cuffs around Lydia Watkins' wrists, something shifted. Not just in Lydia's posture, though she looked like someone who just realized the world wasn't built around her peppermint-scented newsletter, but in the whole neighborhood. Neighbors had come out silently at first, phones in hand. By the time Lydia was read her rights, they were live streaming her downfall. A woman who spent her evenings measuring mailbox heights was now trying to explain to 2 deputies why ambulance sirens after 7 p.m. were an aggressive act of urban terrorism. Beverly didn't flinch. "You interfered with emergency medical access," she said. "But I am the president of this neighborhood," Lydia wailed. "And I'm the sheriff of this county," I muttered from the doorway, arms crossed. "Guess which title outranks which?" Her eyes widened. For a split second, I think she genuinely thought I was bluffing, maybe assuming my bare feet disqualified me from holding public office. But Beverly confirmed it with a short nod and a crisp, "He's telling the truth, ma'am, and you just obstructed his daughter's emergency response." That landed. For the first time, Lydia didn't have a comeback. No policy printout, no pastel power pose. Just silence. The kind she had demanded all night. And the law, oh, it had a lot to say in that silence. The charge: obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, interfering with law enforcement duties, and depending on how hard the prosecutor wanted to push it, possible felony charges under state health and safety statutes. You could feel the ripple, neighbors turning to each other, whispering, "Did you know that was a crime? She blocked a stretcher for a decibel reading?" The HOA board called an emergency meeting the next morning. I didn't attend. I was at the hospital watching Lily sleep with an oxygen monitor taped to her finger. But I heard what happened. Lydia was removed unanimously. Her key card revoked, her access to the community platform suspended. And from what one neighbor texted me, the board is reviewing the entire bylaw language to prevent any future weaponization of sound-level ordinances. Good. Because when you pit the law against a laminated rulebook, and that rulebook forgets its humanity, the law wins. Every time. Justice in motion. From viral video to viral reform. I didn't plan for any of this to go viral. I just wanted my daughter safe. I didn't film anything. I didn't post a thing. I was too busy holding an oxygen mask over Lily's face while paramedics worked to keep her alive. But someone did. Actually, a lot of people did. By the time Lily was stabilized and I finally glanced at my phone again, it had exploded like a 4th of July fireworks box knocked into a bonfire. Missed calls, news notifications, texts from colleagues, cousins, deputies I hadn't talked to since academy. There it was, a 47-second clip of Lydia Watkins standing in front of her neon pink SUV, arms folded, yelling, "I don't care if it's a child, turn off that siren." It was raw, grainy, and absolutely damning. Within 6 hours, it had been picked up by 3 local news outlets. By 12 hours, national networks. By the end of the next day, hashtags were trending. Let them through? Belho gone too far. Lily deserves better. People were mad, rightfully so. Commenters called Lydia Suburbia's Cruella de Vil, the HOA from hell, and the final boss of petty. But buried beneath the memes and viral outrage was something more powerful: momentum. City council members called. State reps emailed. Even the lieutenant governor's office left a voicemail asking for a summary of what happened. It wasn't just about Lydia anymore. It was about every ridiculous moment someone with a clipboard thought their power was more important than a human life. The push began for something bigger, a policy overhaul. They called it Lily's Law. It started as a county-level emergency measure. No private vehicle, person, or organization, including HOAs, could delay or obstruct emergency services under penalty of felony-level fines and mandatory jail time. But the movement didn't stop there. Neighboring counties adopted it. One state senator proposed it as a statewide bill. A viral clip had sparked viral reform. And at the heart of it all, Lily, my sweet, artistic, fiercely curious girl who had just survived the worst night of her life. She didn't understand why people were sending letters, or why folks at the grocery store smiled at her like they knew her. She was still a kid. She just wanted to color and eat grilled cheese and make sure no one changed her favorite TV channel. But she had done something extraordinary without ever knowing it. She had reminded an entire community what mattered, what was worth protecting, what should never, ever be blocked. The trial, when the system stands for a child. The courtroom was full. Not just full of people, full of feeling, tension, anticipation, and something else I didn't expect: quiet solidarity. Reporters lined the back wall. Deputies from my department showed up in uniform, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They sat tall in those chairs like a blue wall of calm resolve. Friends, neighbors, even some of the same folks who used to avoid eye contact at HOA meetings were now nodding toward me with the kind of unspoken support that hits harder than any applause. And there she was, Lydia Watkins, sitting stiffly at the defendant's table in a gray blazer 2 sizes too large and a scowl that hadn't aged well under the weight of public scrutiny. The woman who once barked about curtain compliance now looked very, very small. Her attorney stood to argue stress, misunderstanding, a regrettable lapse in judgment. The prosecutor stood and said 2 words, "Roll tape." The jury watched, jaws tight, as body cam and cell phone footage played out. Lydia blocking the ambulance, yelling about sirens, dismissing a paramedic's cries for urgency, smirking as she waved her HOA handbook like it was the U.S. Constitution. But it wasn't the shouting that sealed the room. It was the silence. That cold, searing moment when I carried Lily into the courtroom to testify. Well, as much as an 8-year-old could. She wore noise-canceling headphones and clutched a small stuffed animal. The judge allowed me to speak on her behalf, and I did, with a father's voice barely holding steady. I told them about the seizure, about the minutes that felt like hours, about watching my daughter turn blue while help sat 70 feet away. Then I said this: the law is not meant to bend for lawn care rules. It's not meant to pause for power trips, and it sure as hell isn't supposed to wait behind a pink SUV while a child fights for her life. The courtroom was so still you could hear the bailiff's pen clicking. Even Lydia looked away. The jury didn't take long. They returned with a verdict of guilty on all counts: obstruction, reckless endangerment, and interference with emergency medical services. The judge, sharp-eyed and unapologetically blunt, gave her 6 months in county jail, a $25,000 0-cents fine, mandatory community service at the pediatric wing of Mercy General, and, perhaps most poetic of all, banned her from serving on any HOA board for life. The sentence didn't feel harsh. It felt like balance. Because this time, the system didn't protect a title. It stood up for a child. Lily's Law, the day a child changed a neighborhood. They call it Lily's Law now. I didn't ask for that. Frankly, I pushed against it at first. She's only 8. She loves sidewalk chalk and grilled cheese and coloring rainbows, with the wrong colors just to see what happens. I didn't want her name forever tied to the night she almost died. But when the city council stood in front of a packed town hall, neighbors, medics, teachers, reporters, and passed the ordinance banning obstruction of emergency vehicles under any circumstance, they named it not out of tragedy, but hope. Not punishment, but prevention. And maybe that's exactly what her name should stand for. Because Lily didn't just survive. She changed us. After the trial, something... I see. You could feel it in the sidewalks. People waved more, doors stayed open a little longer. The new HOA board quietly retired the pastel rule book in favor of something radical, common sense. They put up a sign near the clubhouse. Compassion first. That's the new code. One weekend, I was on our front porch staining the railing when a teenage boy from down the street walked over. He introduced himself, said he'd been there that night but didn't know how to help. Then he said, "Tell Lily thanks. My mom stopped yelling about my music ever since." We laughed. A few weeks later, Mercy General invited us back. Lily and I stood beside the paramedics who saved her as the hospital unveiled a new dedicated response protocol for special needs emergencies. They placed a plaque in the pediatric ICU. In honor of Lily Carter, who reminded us that every second counts and every child matters. She didn't say much, just held my hand, looked up at the glass plaque, and whispered, "That's my name?" I nodded. "Yeah, Sweet Pea. You're kind of famous now." She smiled and asked if we could get ice cream. Of course we could. The irony still isn't lost on me. That the same woman who shouted about silence and decorative order is now spending weekends scrubbing hospital floors in a place filled with the very sounds she tried to suppress. Monitors beeping, pages over loudspeakers, children laughing through recovery. I don't know if she'll ever change, but the neighborhood did, and that's enough for me. Some nights, after Lily's asleep and the house is quiet in the way only a home full of love can be, I walk to her door and peek in. She's always curled up, one leg out of the blanket, holding her stuffed giraffe like it's the key to everything good. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear the faintest sound from her room. Not a siren. Just a soft, content sigh. And I smile because I know that sound means she's safe. And that's all any parent really wants. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Leave a comment for Lily, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us why kindness matters, and why courage doesn't always wear a badge. Next time you hear a siren, remember, someone's counting on it. And maybe, just maybe, Lily's law is why it gets there in time.